At my granddaughter's wedding, I thought I would sit quietly at the corner table, smiling, proud, holding back tears of joy. Instead, I became the joke of the night. The microphone crackled, the best man cleared his throat, and then he called me a burden. The hall roared with laughter. Even my own son laughed. My heart shattered. That was the moment I realized my family had turned me into a spectacle. But what I discovered next changed everything. I suppose I should start at the beginning. My name is Margaret, but most people just call me Grandma now. Once, I was a wife, a partner, a woman who believed family was sacred. My late husband George used to tell me, Maggie, family is the only real treasure in this world. I clung to that belief all my life. George was a proud, hard-working man from Michigan. He built everything we had with his bare hands. I still remember the cottage by the lake, the one he swore would stay in our family forever. It wasn't much, just a little wooden house with chipped paint and a porch swing, but to us, it was paradise. When George passed away, my world dimmed. That cottage became my anchor, the only piece of him left. Our son, David, was my pride. I worked double shifts, sold my wedding jewelry, and gave up vacations just to make sure he had opportunities George and I never did. When he married Laura, I welcomed her with open arms. She was young, stylish, ambitious, so different from me. I thought she would bring new energy into the family. But slowly, things began to shift. After George's funeral, David and Laura insisted I live with them. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom," David said. His words felt like comfort then. I sold my little house in town and moved in carrying nothing but old photo albums, George's watch, and the dream that we would remain close. For a while, it felt like home. Laura would ask about George's recipes, David would hug me after work, and my granddaughter Emily would curl up beside me while I told bedtime stories. Those were the moments I lived for. But cracks began to show. It started small. Laura rolled her eyes at my clothes. "Mom, that floral dress looks like a tablecloth." I laughed it off. She made fun of my handwriting on grocery lists, calling it chicken scratches. I ignored it. I told myself she was just young, just teasing. Then during Emily's engagement preparations, Laura became bolder. When I offered to sew my own dress for the wedding, she smirked. "Don't embarrass us, okay? This isn't some church bake sale." My cheeks burned, but I stayed silent. I reminded myself, it's Emily's day, not mine. Don't make waves. The worst part? David never defended me. He would chuckle awkwardly, as if siding with his wife was easier than standing up for his mother. I bit my tongue again and again, convincing myself love meant patience. Still, I held on to hope. I poured myself into helping with the wedding. I baked pies for the rehearsal dinner, polished family heirlooms for the table displays, and even sold some of George's old tools to contribute money quietly. I thought, maybe this will show them how much I care. Maybe this will prove I'm not a burden. On the day of the wedding, I felt nervous but excited. I wore a soft lavender dress, simple but neat. I pinned George's watch inside my purse, as if he were with me. I smiled through photographs, clapped during the vows, and when Emily kissed her groom, my eyes filled with tears of pride. I thought it would be a perfect day. But then the speeches began. The best man took the microphone. He was supposed to share stories about the couple. Instead, he grinned and said, "We all know who the real star of the night is. Grandma." At first, I thought it was sweet, until the words turned sharp. "She's been living rent-free for years. What a life! Free food, free house, no bills. Who knew the secret to happiness was just being old?" The crowd roared. Glasses clinked. Laughter echoed across the hall. I froze. My hands trembled. My ears rang. I searched for David, for a sign that he would stop it. But he laughed. Laura leaned into him, whispering, her eyes glinting with triumph. The floor might as well have swallowed me whole. I forced a smile, but inside I screamed. How could my own son find amusement in my humiliation? How could my family, the people I gave everything to, sit there and laugh at me like I was a clown? I excused myself, retreating to the bathroom, my heart pounding. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Red eyes, trembling lips, shoulders slumped with shame. That was the moment something shifted inside me. For the first time, I saw the truth. This wasn't a careless joke. This was permission. Permission to mock me. Permission to erase me. I told myself, endure it, Margaret. Endure it for Emily. Don't ruin her night. But I couldn't unsee the betrayal, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Because as I left that bathroom, head bowed, I overheard something. Two bridesmaids whispering near the sink. Their words sliced me open. She dared him to do it. Laura told the best man to roast her, said it would be hilarious. My knees nearly gave out, so it wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated. I clutched the sink for support, my nails digging into porcelain. A cold fury burned in my chest. Laura had turned me into entertainment. My son had gone along with it, and the world had laughed. But what I discovered next changed everything. When I left that bathroom, I walked back into the reception hall with a smile plastered across my face. My body felt numb, like I was floating above the laughter and clinking glasses. But inside, I was on fire. I kept hearing their whispers. She dared him to do it. Laura, my daughter-in-law, the woman I welcomed like a daughter, had fed and clothed and trusted. She had orchestrated my humiliation. I took my seat again, forcing myself to clap when the music played, forcing my lips into a smile when the photographer pointed his camera my way. But every time I glanced at Laura, I saw that smirk, the smug satisfaction of someone who believed she'd won. That night, when the reception ended and the guests began to leave, David helped his wife into the car. I waited, hoping he would notice my silence, my pain, and ask what was wrong. Instead, he said, "Lighten up, Mom, it was just a joke, don't take it so seriously." Just a joke. I wanted to scream, "Would you laugh if someone mocked your father that way? Would you call it a joke if I had humiliated you on your wedding day?" But I said nothing. My voice was trapped beneath the weight of betrayal. The days that followed only made things worse. Laura bragged about it to her friends on the phone. I heard her giggling late at night. "Oh my God," she almost cried. It was priceless. The look on her face. I'll never forget it. Her words stabbed deeper than any knife. "David?" He laughed with her. Sometimes I heard them talking in hushed tones about how fragile I was. "She's too sensitive. She's always been dramatic," David would say. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the words seeped in anyway. I began noticing other things too. Papers left carelessly on the kitchen counter. Financial forms. Notes scribbled in Laura's handwriting. Transfer title. Signature needed. Sell cottage. My heart froze. The cottage. George's cottage. The place he built with his hands, where we spent summers fishing, where Emily took her first steps. It was still in my name. And now they wanted to take it. At first I thought maybe I was mistaken. Maybe they were planning something else. But then, one evening, I overheard them talking in the living room. Laura's voice. "She's not going to be around forever. That property is wasted on her. Once it's in our name, we can sell it and put the money to good use." David's reply. "I'll convince her. She'll sign it over. She owes us." Owes them. My knees weakened. I leaned against the wall, pressing my fist against my mouth to stifle the sob that threatened to escape. All my sacrifices, selling my jewelry, working myself to exhaustion, giving them every ounce of my strength, and now I owed them? It didn't stop there. At family dinners, Laura made little digs, each one sharper than the last. "Careful with the salt, Grandma. We don't want you forgetting things again." "She spends all day watching TV. Must be nice to have no responsibilities." And David laughed along. Emily noticed. She pulled me aside one night, her young face full of worry. "Grandma, are you okay? You look different." I wanted to tell her everything, but how could I? This was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. I couldn't poison it with my pain. So I smiled, stroked her cheek, and said, "I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired." But I wasn't fine. I was drowning. One night, unable to sleep, I went into the kitchen for tea. The light was still on. Laura was there, sitting with a friend. They didn't see me at first. "Honestly," Laura said, sipping her wine, "she's pathetic. always hanging around like a lost puppy. I mean, who wants their mother-in-law in their house forever? If David doesn't grow a backbone soon, I'll handle it myself. Her friend laughed. You're ruthless. Laura smirked. Survival of the fittest. The words echoed in my skull. Survival of the fittest. I stepped back before they noticed me, retreating into the shadows like some unwelcome ghost. The next morning, I tried to speak to David. I told him I'd overheard Laura's words. I begged him to defend me. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Mom, don't start drama. Laura's just under stress. You know how she gets. David, I whispered, she wants me gone. His face hardened. Maybe it would be easier if you found your own place. You can't stay here forever. Those words broke me. My own son. The boy I raised, the boy I cradled when he was sick, the boy I fought for when teachers said he'd never make it. He wanted me gone. I locked myself in my room that night, clutching George's watch in my hands, rocking back and forth like a child. I thought of every insult, every laugh, every betrayal, the humiliation at the wedding, the whispers, the plans to steal the cottage. I realized then that this wasn't just cruelty. This was erasure. They wanted to erase me from their lives, strip me of dignity, and take the last piece of my husband. Tears blurred my vision. My chest heaved with sobs. I felt hollow, useless, discarded. And then came the final blow. A week later, David knocked on my door. He stood there with a pen and papers in his hand. Mom, it's just paperwork. We'll take care of the taxes and upkeep. It'll be easier if the cottage is under our names. You can still visit whenever you want. His voice was smooth, rehearsed. I stared at the papers. The deed, the cottage deed. I won't sign, I whispered. He frowned. Don't be difficult. It's for the best. Behind him, Laura appeared, arms crossed, smiling like a cat watching a trapped mouse. Think about it, Margaret, she purred. You're not getting any younger. Wouldn't you rather have peace of mind knowing everything is handled? My fingers trembled, but I clutched the papers to my chest. No. David's voice dropped, low and cold. Don't make me choose between you and my wife. The air drained from my lungs. I realized then that he had already chosen. My heart cracked in a way I didn't know was possible. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at George's photo. My body shook with grief, rage, and despair. I whispered, George, they want to take everything. They want to erase me. What do I do? The silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. I had never felt so alone. But in that silence, a seed of something darker began to take root. Because I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, that if I didn't fight back, they would succeed. And I wasn't ready to disappear. Not yet. Not ever. But before I could think of how, I still had to endure one more cruel twist. And that was the night everything finally broke inside me. The night David handed me those papers, I knew something inside me had shattered. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed with the lamp burning low, staring at the signatures they expected me to give. Each line felt like a death sentence, not just for the cottage, but for me. I thought of George, his strong hands, his laugh, the way he used to say, Maggie, no one can take away your worth unless you let them. But hadn't I already let them? I'd let Laura chip away at me, insult after insult. I'd let David stand by, silent while she humiliated me. I'd let them laugh at me in front of hundreds of people. And now, they wanted the last piece of my life with George. The tears came fast and heavy. I buried my face in the pillow, sobbing until the sheets were wet. For the first time in years, I wished I could vanish. If this was family, maybe I didn't want to be part of it anymore. For days, I drifted like a ghost. I avoided the kitchen when Laura was there. I avoided David's eyes. I tiptoed around the house like a stranger, clinging to silence. Emily noticed. She came to me one afternoon, her eyes wide and worried. Grandma, what's going on? You're not yourself. I tried to smile. I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired. But she didn't buy it. She sat beside me on the bed, her hand on mine. Is it Mom? Dad? Did they say something? Her kindness cracked me open. The words spilled out before I could stop them. The joke at the wedding, the whispers, the papers. By the time I finished, Emily's face was pale. "They did that to you?" she whispered. "On my wedding day?" I nodded, shame burning my cheeks. "I didn't want to ruin it for you, but yes." She squeezed my hand, her voice trembling. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. If I had known—" Her tears matched mine. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen, not invisible, not erased. That night, Emily came back with something in her hand, a folder. She placed it on my lap. "Grandpa left more than you think," she whispered. "Dad doesn't know. Mom doesn't know. But I do." Inside were old letters, bank statements, and a copy of George's will. My breath caught as I scanned the words. The cottage wasn't just mine. It was protected. George had made sure it couldn't be sold without my consent. Tears blurred my vision again, but this time they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't at their mercy. For the first time since that cruel joke, I felt the faint spark of strength return. But Emily wasn't finished. She leaned closer, whispering, "Grandma, I overheard Mom talking to her friend again. She said once the cottage is theirs, they're planning to flip it. They already have buyers lined up." The fury that surged through me was like fire in my veins. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to erase my husband's legacy, sell it off like junk. No, not while I was alive. That night, I sat awake with George's photo in my hands. I whispered to him, "They think I'm weak. They think I'm finished, but I won't let them win. Not this time." The fear that had paralyzed me began to shift. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. And anger, I realized, could be powerful. I remembered things George used to say about business deals, about patience and timing. "The best revenge isn't loud, Maggie. It's quiet. You let them think they're winning, and then you take it all back." Those words lit a fuse inside me. I began to see clearly. Laura with her smug grin, David with his cowardly silence, both of them so sure of themselves, so confident I would fold. But I wouldn't fold. I would play their game, smile when they mocked me, stay silent when they plotted, pretend to be weak. All the while, I'd gather everything I needed. For the first time since the wedding, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't see a broken woman. I saw someone who had been underestimated, someone who still had fight left. I whispered to my reflection, "They took my pride, they tried to take my home, but they will never take my strength." And with that, I began to plan. What came next would not just silence their laughter, it would destroy it, forever. I played my role well. At breakfast, I nodded politely when Laura spoke about redecorating her future lake house. I kept my voice soft when David mentioned long-term plans. I even laughed when Laura joked about finally getting rid of my old rocking chair. Inside, I was steel. I spent quiet evenings with Emily, going through every document George had left behind. His will was ironclad. The cottage wasn't just mine. It was protected by a trust that gave me full control, regardless of David's demands. And there was more. Accounts George had never told anyone about. Investments that had quietly grown. I wasn't a helpless old woman. I was the keeper of a legacy Laura couldn't even imagine. Emily's eyes sparkled when she realized it too. "Grandma," she whispered one night, "they think you're powerless. You could ruin them." I shook my head. "Not ruin. Teach. Sometimes the cruelest lesson is simply the truth." And so, I set the stage. When Laura pushed the papers across the table again, I smiled sweetly. "Of course, dear, but let's make it official. Invite your lawyer. I want everything neat and tidy." Her face lit up with triumph. David looked relieved. They thought the battle was won. The following week, we gathered in their living room. Laura in her polished blazer, David fidgeting beside her, their lawyer flipping through documents. I arrived with Emily and with a folder of my own. Laura tapped her pen. "Let's get this signed, shall we? No need to drag this out." I let her bask in her victory for a moment, then slowly opened my folder. "Actually, before I sign anything, there's something you should both see." I slid George's will across the table. The lawyer's eyes widened as he scanned the pages. His brows furrowed deeper with every line. "Mrs. Peterson, he said carefully. Your husband's trust stipulates that the lake cottage is solely your property. It cannot be transferred, sold, or claimed without your explicit consent. Laura blinked. That can't be right. The lawyer looked directly at her. It's airtight, ironclad. This house isn't your husband's to demand, and it certainly isn't yours. The color drained from her face. David shifted in his seat, his voice barely a whisper. Mom, why didn't you say anything? I met his eyes, calm, steady. Because I wanted to see how far you would go, and now I know. Laura tried to recover, her voice sharp. This is ridiculous. We've already discussed plans with buyers. Her lawyer cut her off. Then you've made promises you can't keep. Legally, this property is untouchable. The silence that followed was thick. Emily squeezed my hand under the table. But I wasn't finished. I reached back into my folder and pulled out the financial statements George had left behind. And one more thing. You think I'm a burden, that I need you, but George left me more than memories, more than enough to live comfortably without asking a penny from either of you. I let the words sink in. So let's get this straight. I am not your problem. I am not your project, and I am certainly not your punchline. Laura's face crumpled, her composure unraveling in front of her own lawyer. David looked at me, guilt swimming in his eyes. For once, he had no words. But Emily did. She turned to her parents, her voice steady. You humiliated her in front of everyone. You've treated her like she doesn't matter. Well, she matters more than either of you realize. And if you keep this up, you'll lose more than just the cottage. You'll lose me too. The room went silent. Laura sputtered, but there was nothing left for her to say. The lawyer closed his folder with a snap. David sank back in his chair, defeated. I rose slowly, every step deliberate, my dignity restored. Thank you for your time, I said softly. I think this conversation is over. And with that, Emily and I walked out. The fallout was swift. The whispers spread through town. How David and Laura had tried to trick me. How the will had exposed them. How the daughter they wanted to impress now sided with me. They avoided me after that. Laura couldn't bear the humiliation. David's shame kept him silent. The balance of power had shifted forever. And for the first time since that cruel wedding day, I walked tall. But the story wasn't finished yet, because the real victory wasn't in their downfall. It was in what came after. The silence after the storm was sweeter than I ever imagined. For weeks, David barely looked me in the eye. Laura, once so smug, now walked on eggshells. Her smile stretched too tight whenever I was near. The humiliation of that day clung to her like a shadow she couldn't shake. But me? I felt lighter, stronger. I spent mornings on the porch of the cottage, rocking in the chair Laura had mocked, watching the lake shimmer in the sunrise. Emily joined me often, her laughter filling the air like music. She wasn't embarrassed of me anymore. She was proud. Sometimes she would rest her head on my shoulder and whisper, "Grandma, you're the bravest woman I know." And I would smile because bravery hadn't come easy. It had been forged in humiliation, betrayal, and heartbreak. Word of what happened spread through our small Michigan town. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles and knowing looks. Old friends called me, saying they had always suspected Laura's cruelty, but never imagined David would go along with it. The whispers grew, and soon it wasn't me who was pitied. It was them. David had wanted admiration. Laura had craved control. Instead, they earned nothing but shame. And here's the cruelest twist of all. I never had to raise my voice. I never had to fight dirty. I simply revealed the truth George had left behind, the truth they were too blind, too greedy to see. One evening, David came alone to the porch, his shoulders slumped, his voice heavy with regret. "Mom," he said quietly, "I don't know what came over me. I let her get in my head. I let you down." I looked at him for a long time. My son, the boy I had raised, the man who had once held my hand as we buried his father, the man who had sat silent while his wife humiliated me. "I don't need your apology," I told him. "What I need is your respect, and if you can't give me that, then we have nothing left to say." He nodded, tears filling his eyes. And though I wanted to believe him, I knew some wounds cut too deep to heal. But Emily, she was my redemption, my proof that love still ran true in this family. She visited every weekend, helped me fix up the cottage, brought her friends to swim in the lake. And when she smiled at me, I saw George's kindness flickering back into the world. The wedding day that once haunted me now felt like a turning point. Yes, they had mocked me. Yes, they had tried to strip me of my dignity. But in the end, I rose higher than their laughter. And that is what betrayal teaches you, that sometimes the sharpest revenge isn't in striking back, it's in standing taller, shining brighter, and letting your enemies crumble under the weight of their own choices. So now, when I sit on that porch and watch the sun dip behind the water, I whisper to myself, "You won, Margaret. You didn't just survive, you triumphed." And that was the day they realized they had lost everything, while I had gained more than they ever could.